They say a mother's love reaches beyond the grave. I never truly understood that until my daughter Lily's wedding day, June 14th, 2025, when a limping stranger appeared at our celebration and shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Margaret Chin, and this is the story of how one wedding guest unearthed a secret buried for 43 years, a secret that would cost me $47,000, nearly destroy my family, and ultimately teach me that some legacies are meant to be resurrected, not hidden. My mother, Susan Kowalski Chin, died on March 3, 2025, from complications of dementia. She was 78 years old. For the last 6 years of her life, I was her primary caregiver, bathing her, feeding her, listening to her rambling stories that made less sense each day. Stories about wells and promises and debts unpaid. I thought they were just the confused wanderings of a failing mind. I was wrong. How could I have known that my mother's dying words, "The well remembers everything," would come back to haunt me at the happiest moment of my daughter's wedding? 3 months before the wedding, I was drowning in details. Lily wanted a garden ceremony at our family home, the same house where I'd grown up, where my mother had lived her entire American life after immigrating from Poland in 1967. 200 guests, a $10,000 budget that had already ballooned to $18,000. My husband James and I were covering everything because Lily's father, my ex-husband David, had remarried and claimed he couldn't afford to contribute. Typical David, always disappearing when things required effort or money. But I wasn't bitter, not anymore. I'd learned long ago that some people are takers and some people are givers. I'd chosen to be a giver, especially for my daughter. Lily deserved her perfect day. My mother had left me an envelope 3 weeks before she died, during one of her rare lucid moments. Inside was a letter written in her shaky handwriting, along with a single rusted key. The letter said, "Margaret, my darling girl, if anyone comes asking about the Novak family, about the well, about what happened in 1982, you must listen. You must make it right. The key opens the truth. I'm sorry I was too afraid. Love, always, Mama." I had no idea what it meant. The Novak family? We didn't know anyone by that name. What well? What happened in 1982? I was only 11 years old then, just a child. I remembered that year vaguely. My father had died suddenly of a heart attack in July, and my mother had become distant, secretive. But children don't question their parents' grief. They just survive it. I told myself I'd figure it out after the wedding. I had no time for old mysteries when I was trying to coordinate catering for 200 people and finalize floral arrangements. Besides, Mom's dementia had made her paranoid toward the end. Maybe this was just another delusion, another fragment of a mind coming apart at the seams. "Mom, I found the perfect color for the bridesmaids, dusty rose. What do you think?" Lily's joy was infectious. At 26, she was radiant, in love with her fiancé, Marcus, full of hope. I pushed the letter from my mind and focused on what mattered, giving my daughter her perfect celebration. But fate has a way of refusing to be ignored, and sometimes the past shows up uninvited, wearing a gray suit and walking with a limp. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. It gnawed at me during the day and kept me awake at night. Who were the Novaks? What well was my mother talking about? I decided to do some digging, carefully, quietly, without alarming anyone or disrupting the wedding preparations. I started with genealogy websites, searching for any connection between our family and anyone named Novak. Nothing. Then I tried local historical records, property deeds, old newspaper archives from 1982. Still nothing obvious. But then I found something strange in the county clerk's office records from August 1982. A family named Novak had filed a claim against my parents, Peter and Susan Chen, regarding unauthorized obstruction of shared water access and property boundary violations. The case was settled out of court, terms sealed. My mother had paid the Novaks $12,000, a fortune in 1982, equivalent to about $43,000 today. $12,000. We hadn't been wealthy. My father worked at a textile factory. My mother cleaned houses. Where had that money come from? And what had they done to require such a payment? The document mentioned the well property at 47 Meadowbrook Lane, our address, our house. Was there a well on our property? I'd lived in this house my entire life and never seen a well. But then I remembered the far corner of our backyard where my mother had planted a large rose garden when I was 12, right after my father died. She'd been obsessive about it, spending hours there, forbidding me from digging or playing in that area. The roses need special care, she said. Don't disturb them. What if she hadn't been protecting roses? What if she'd been hiding something underneath them? I grabbed a flashlight and headed outside, my heart pounding. I was about to discover that some gardens grow on top of graves and some secrets refuse to stay buried. I felt ridiculous digging in my mother's rose garden at midnight like some grave robber, but I couldn't shake the feeling that answers were buried here, literally beneath my feet. I pushed aside the thick rose bushes, careful not to damage them. They were over 40 years old now, massive and tangled. And then I felt it. About 6 inches down, my trowel struck something that wasn't soil, something flat and hard. Concrete. I spent 2 hours that night carefully excavating, and what I found made my blood run cold. A concrete cap, roughly 4 feet in diameter, slightly sunken into the ground. In the center was a rusted metal plate with a keyhole. A well cap. My mother had covered over a well and planted a garden on top of it. But why? Wells are valuable, especially in drought conditions. Why would anyone seal one off? Unless there was something inside it that needed to stay hidden. The key fit the lock, but 43 years of rust had frozen the mechanism solid. I'd need professional help to open it, a locksmith maybe, a structural engineer to make sure the well was safe. But that meant questions, explanations, people knowing about whatever secret my mother had kept. I could have left it alone, covered it back up, replanted the roses, pretended I'd never found anything. Sometimes ignorance truly is bliss. But I'm my mother's daughter, stubborn, curious, unable to let mysteries rest. I needed to know what she'd hidden. I needed to understand why she was so afraid. I decided to wait until after the wedding. I'd get the well opened, discover whatever needed discovering, and deal with it privately. No drama, no disruptions. Lily's perfect day would remain perfect. What I didn't know was that the Novak family had other plans, and they'd been waiting 43 years for their chance to be heard. Because 3 weeks later, on a rainy Tuesday morning, my doorbell rang, and standing on my porch was an elderly man with silver hair, kind eyes, and a pronounced limp. "Mrs. Chen," he said quietly, "my name is Thomas Novak. I believe it's time we talked about the well." My first instinct was to slam the door. This was a stranger mentioning the exact thing my mother had warned me about in her letter, but something in his eyes stopped me. Not anger or accusation, but a deep, weary sadness. This was a man who'd carried a burden for a very long time. "Please come in," I heard myself saying. Thomas Novak limped inside, favoring his left leg heavily. He sat down carefully on my sofa, and I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. Whatever he'd come to say, it wasn't easy for him either. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," he began, his voice gentle, accented, Polish like my mother's had been. "I've been watching this house for many years, waiting for the right moment. When I saw the wedding preparations in your yard, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Some debts must be settled before celebrations can be pure." Debts. That word again, the same word from the property dispute in 1982. "Mr. Novak," I said carefully, "I found your family's court case against my parents, the settlement from 43 years ago, but I don't understand. That was settled. The debt was paid." Thomas shook his head sadly. "The money was paid, yes, $12,000, leaving my mother destitute, but the real debt was never repaid, Mrs. Chen, because it wasn't about money. It was about a life. My sister's life, Anna Novak. She was 19 years old when she died in that well on July 15th, 1982. I couldn't breathe. A death? My parents had been involved in someone's death? "No," I whispered. That's not possible. There must be some mistake. My parents were good people. They wouldn't—" Thomas opened his leather folder, pulling out yellowed newspaper clippings. July 16th, 1982. Local woman missing after property dispute. July 30th, 1982. Anna Novak, 19, presumed drowned. August 12, 1982. Novak family accepts settlement, case closed. The articles were vague, sanitized, hiding the real story beneath bureaucratic language. "My sister didn't drown in a lake, Mrs. Chen," he said quietly, his eyes filling with tears. "She fell into the well on your property, a well your father insisted didn't exist, even as we begged him to let us search. She was down there for 3 days before she died, 3 days while your parents covered the opening with boards and claimed they'd seen her leave the property. They let her die in the dark, and then they poured concrete over her grave." I thought I might vomit. My parents, my kind, church-going immigrant parents, had let a teenage girl die trapped in a well and then buried the evidence? It was impossible. It was monstrous. It couldn't be true. But Thomas Novak's face told me it was. "Why?" I managed to choke out. "Why would they do that? Why not call for help?" Thomas's expression was complex. Anger, grief, exhaustion all mixed together. "Because they were terrified, Mrs. Chen. Terrified immigrants who'd built a life in America, who'd bought this property through sacrifice. Your father had built a shed over the old well opening without realizing it violated property line agreements with my family. We shared water rights from that well going back to the 1930s. When he discovered it, we asked him to remove the shed, to restore our access. He refused. Allison came here on July 15th to take photographs, to document the violation for our lawyer. Your father confronted her. They argued. He was not a violent man, just frightened and stubborn. When she tried to walk around the shed to photograph the well, she stepped on rotted boards your father had placed over the opening. They gave way. She fell 23 feet into darkness. Your father heard her screams. Your mother heard them. I know because I was there, waiting in the car at the end of your driveway. I heard Anna cry out. I ran toward the sound, but your father met me in the yard, told me Anna had already left, that I was trespassing. He threatened to call the police. His face was white, panicked. I believed him because I was young and stupid and afraid of authority. Thomas wiped his eyes, the memory clearly agonizing. I searched for her all night. The next morning, your father had already boarded up the shed completely, started pouring concrete. When we came back with police, he claimed the well had been sealed for months, that it was dangerous and he'd been meaning to cap it properly. The police believed him. They searched the woods, the river, everywhere but under that fresh concrete. Anna called out for 3 days, Thomas said, his voice breaking. I could hear her sometimes, faintly when the wind was right and the neighborhood was quiet, calling my name, calling for water. But I couldn't prove where the sound was coming from, and your father had already finished the concrete work, planted grass seed. By the time we hired a lawyer, by the time we forced a settlement, it was too late. Anna was silent, gone. My parents knew, I whispered, the realization crashing over me like ice water. They knew she was down there, dying, and they just waited for her to stop calling? Thomas nodded slowly. Your mother couldn't live with it. That's why she paid us the settlement, everything they had. That's why she made you that promise. Mrs. Chen, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to ask you to let me bring my sister home, to let her finally rest in consecrated ground beside our mother. Will you help me? What do you say when someone asks you to excavate your childhood home, to retrieve the remains of a girl your parents killed through cowardice and fear? What do you say when you realize your entire understanding of your family is built on a foundation of lies and death? I'll help you, I said finally. Of course I'll help you. But Mr. Novak, Thomas, I need to ask you something. Why now? Why wait 43 years? Why come just weeks before my daughter's wedding? Thomas's expression shifted, something like guilt crossing his features. Because I'm dying, Mrs. Chen. Lung cancer, stage 4. I have perhaps 6 months left, maybe less. I made a promise to my mother when she died in 1998 that I would bring Anna home, that I wouldn't let her lie in an unmarked grave forever. But I was angry, bitter. I wanted your family to suffer as mine had suffered. So I waited. I watched. I let the secret fester like a wound. He pulled out photographs of a young woman, Anna, beautiful and full of life. But bitterness is a poison that kills the vessel holding it. After your mother contacted me from hospice, after she begged my forgiveness and told me about the letter and key she was leaving you, something changed in me. She said, Thomas, I'm going to tell Margaret everything. She deserves to know, and Anna deserves to finally come home. Please don't let my sins destroy my daughter's happiness. After the wedding. Can you wait until after the wedding? So my mother had known. In her final days, when the dementia briefly lifted like morning fog, she'd known and she'd reached out. She'd tried to make it right, even knowing it could destroy me, destroy our family's reputation, destroy everything. But you didn't wait, I said softly. You came before the wedding. Thomas nodded, looking ashamed. I couldn't. Every day I wake up and wonder if it's my last. I see Anna in my dreams, still calling for help, still trapped in the dark. I understand. God help me, I understand. Because if it were Lily down in that well, if it were my daughter's bones lying under concrete and roses, I'd want someone to bring her home, no matter whose wedding it ruined. Justice doesn't care about timing. The dead don't respect your schedule. We'll do it right, I told him. We'll involve the police, the medical examiner, whoever needs to be involved. We'll bring Anna home with dignity, and then she can be at the wedding, not trapped anymore, not forgotten, a guest we're finally honoring. Thomas's eyes widened. You'd still have the wedding here after knowing what happened? I met his gaze steadily. My mother spent 43 years running from this property's history. I won't. We'll acknowledge the past, honor Anna's memory, and celebrate life in the same space. It's what both our mothers would want. What I didn't know was that uncovering Anna's remains would cost me far more than money. It would cost me my brother, my reputation, and nearly my sanity. I'd called the police 3 days after Thomas's visit, once I'd had time to verify his story, read my mother's letter again, and prepare myself for what was coming. Detective Maria Reyes took my statement with a skepticism that quickly turned to grim determination when I showed her the property records, the newspaper clippings, and my mother's confession letter. Mrs. Chen, Detective Reyes told me, this is now a potential criminal investigation into unlawful disposal of human remains at minimum. If we find what Mr. Novak claims is down there, this property will be a crime scene. Are you prepared for that? For the media attention? The neighbors talking? The potential legal consequences, even though your parents are deceased? I nodded. I'm prepared to do what's right. But I wasn't prepared. Not really. How do you prepare for watching strangers tear apart your childhood, expose your family's darkest secret, prove that everything you believed about the people who raised you was a carefully constructed lie? They found the concrete cap exactly where I'd indicated. It took 6 hours to carefully break through without damaging whatever might be below. I held Thomas's hand as they worked, felt his fingers trembling, heard him whispering prayers in Polish. He'd waited 43 years for this moment. His sister had waited 43 years to be found. Detective Reyes approached, her expression somber. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Novak, we've confirmed human remains at the bottom of the well. Female, approximate age consistent with a teenager or young adult. The medical examiner is being very careful with the recovery, but this appears to match Mr. Novak's account. I'm sorry, this confirms your worst fears. Thomas collapsed into my arms, sobbing. He cried like a child. 43 years of grief pouring out of him in great wrenching sobs. Anna, he kept saying. Oh, God, Anna, I'm so sorry I left you down there. I'm so sorry. I held this stranger, this man whose family my parents had destroyed, and I cried with him. For Anna, for our mothers, for all the ways fear and selfishness corrode our humanity. By evening, it was all over the local news. Human remains found in backyard well, 43-year-old mystery solved. My phone exploded with calls, texts, messages. Friends, relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know, had my parents really done this? Was it true? How could I have not known? And then David called. My ex-husband, who'd contributed nothing to Lily's wedding, who'd disappeared from our lives years ago, suddenly had opinions about my family scandal. Margaret, what the hell is happening? Lily's devastated. She's talking about canceling the wedding. You need to fix this. I hung up on him, but he was right about one thing. Lily was devastated. And when she showed up at my door that night, her face pale with shock and betrayal, I realized the hardest part wasn't excavating Anna's grave. It was explaining to my daughter that her grandmother, whom she'd adored, been complicit in a teenage girl's death. "Mom, tell me it's not true." Lily's voice was small, broken. "Tell me Grandma Susan didn't let someone die. Please." I wanted to lie. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to protect her, to minimize, to explain it away somehow. But I'd seen where secrets led. They led to wells filled with bones and gardens blooming over graves. "It's true, sweetheart," I said quietly. "Grandma and Grandpa were involved in Anna Novak's death. They didn't kill her intentionally, but they let her die through their silence, and then they covered it up." Lily's face crumpled. Thomas put his arm around her. "How could they? How could Grandma? She was so kind, so loving. She taught me to bake, to sew, to pray. She was good." "She was human," I said gently. "She made a terrible choice out of fear, and then she spent the rest of her life trying to live with it. She left me that letter because she wanted the truth to come out. She wanted Anna to finally have justice." Lily stood abruptly, pacing. "Everyone's talking about it, Mom. My coworkers, my friends, people I barely know are sending me articles and asking questions. Isn't that your grandmother? Is your wedding still happening at the murder house? They're calling it the murder house. We have to cancel or move it. We can't have the wedding here, not now, not with everyone knowing what happened. Marcus's parents are freaking out. They're saying the property is cursed, that it's disrespectful to Anna's memory to celebrate there. Maybe they're right." I gripped Lily's shoulders gently but firmly. "Listen to me, Lily. I understand you're scared and embarrassed and angry. You have every right to be. But canceling or running away won't honor Anna's memory. You know what will? Acknowledging what happened, helping give her a proper burial, and then celebrating life and love in that space. Transforming a place of tragedy into a place of hope. I've spoken with Thomas Novak at length. He doesn't want revenge or punishment. He wants his sister to finally rest in peace, and he wants our families to find healing. He asked if he could attend your wedding, not to disrupt it, but to witness that life continues, that beauty can grow even from terrible soil." Lily's tears fell freely now. "You want him at my wedding? The brother of the girl Grandma killed?" "The brother of a girl who deserves to be remembered," I corrected softly. "Lily, you're about to start a marriage, a new family. You'll face hard things, make difficult choices, sometimes fail to live up to your own values. I'm teaching you something crucial right now. When you discover wrongdoing in your family's past, you don't hide it. You face it, make amends where possible, and do better going forward." Marcus spoke up. "I think your mom's right, Lily. What happened was awful, but it wasn't your fault or your mom's fault. Running away doesn't fix anything. Maybe we could do something at the wedding to honor Anna. Include her somehow." Lily looked between us, her expression slowly shifting from panic to something like resolution. "Okay," she whispered. But Mom, if we're doing this, if we're really doing this, then we do it all the way. We tell Anna's story. We make sure people know what happened and why it matters. I nodded, relief and dread mixing in equal measure, because what Lily didn't know yet was that my brother Raymond had just learned about the discovery, and he was about to make everything infinitely worse. Raymond, my older brother by 5 years, the golden child, the successful attorney who'd moved to California 20 years ago and rarely visited. We'd never been close. He always considered me the disappointment, the one who stayed home instead of pursuing a career, the one who'd wasted her education with marriage and motherhood. You found Anna's body, Raymond. She was exactly where Thomas Novak said she'd be. This isn't about attention. It's about justice for a teenage girl who died terrified and alone. I don't care about some dead stranger. I care about our family. Do you know how this looks? My law partners are asking about it. My clients are questioning my judgment because my parents were involved in covering up a death. You've made all of us look like criminals. We have to stop this, he continued, pulling out papers. I've consulted with several attorneys. We can fight the medical examiner's findings, question the identification, make this messy enough that the Novak family drops it. We settle quietly, seal the records, make it go away. I stared at him in disbelief. You want to cover it up again? You want to put Anna back in that well, metaphorically? I want to protect our family, Raymond shouted, something you apparently don't care about. And here's another thing. That property is half mine. Mom and Dad left it to both of us. You can't make these decisions unilaterally. This was true. The house was jointly inherited, though Raymond had never shown any interest in it before, had signed documents letting me live rent-free as long as I maintained it. You've never cared about this house, I said slowly. Why now? His smile was ugly. Because now it's worth something. Property values in this area have quadrupled. We're sitting on at least $700,000, probably more, and you're tanking that value by turning it into a crime scene curiosity. I want my half, Raymond said coldly. Sell it, split the proceeds, and we can all move on. Or refuse and I'll force a partition sale. Either way, I'm getting my money. And Margaret, if you don't drop this crusade about Anna Novak, if you don't stop cooperating with the investigation, I'll make Lily's wedding the last event you ever host here. I'll have you evicted if necessary. He was serious. I could see it in his eyes. My own brother was willing to destroy me, to evict my niece before her wedding, to bury the truth again, all for money and reputation. That's when I knew this battle wasn't just about Anna anymore. It was about what kind of person I was going to be. I needed legal protection, fast. Raymond's threat to force a partition sale wasn't empty. As co-owner, he could petition the court for partition, and judges often sided with the party wanting to liquidate assets. I'd spent 4 sleepless nights researching options and draining my savings account to hire Jennifer Walsh, one of the best real estate attorneys in Massachusetts. Your situation is complicated, Margaret, Jennifer said carefully. Raymond has legal standing to request partition, especially if he can prove the property's value is being damaged by your decisions. However, there are several factors in your favor. First, you've been the sole occupant and maintainer for 23 years. Second, there's your daughter's imminent wedding on the property. Forcing a sale now would cause undue hardship. Third, and most importantly, there's an active investigation into human remains on the property, which complicates any sale. Can you stop him? I can delay him significantly, possibly for years, but Margaret, you need to understand, fighting this will cost you. Legal fees could easily reach $50,000, $60,000, and Raymond can afford to match you dollar for dollar as an attorney. This could drain you financially. I don't care about the money. This is about principle. My parents did something terrible, and instead of helping make amends, my brother wants to profit from covering it up again. I won't let that happen. File whatever motions you need to file. Jennifer nodded, respect in her eyes. Then let's talk strategy. First, we'll file for a temporary injunction preventing any sale until after the active investigation concludes. Second, we'll argue that you have first right of refusal to buy out Raymond's half. Can you secure financing? I'd already talked to the bank. With the property's increased value, I could refinance, take out a second mortgage, pull from my retirement accounts. It would mean working until I was 70 instead of 65. It would mean giving up the travel I'd dreamed of, the comfortable retirement I'd planned. But it would mean keeping the home where Lily had grown up, where we could honor Anna's memory properly, where I could finally make peace with my family's past. I can get the money, $350,000 for Raymond's half, based on fair market value assessment. Then we have a plan, Jennifer said, beginning to draft documents. Now, about the criminal investigation, Detective Reyes has indicated they're not pursuing charges against you or your estate, correct? Yes, the statute of limitations has long passed for most charges, and both my parents are deceased. They're classifying it as a historical death investigation, documenting what happened, recovering remains, providing closure. No criminal prosecution. But the media attention... I trailed off, thinking of the reporters camped at the end of my driveway, the think pieces being written about the buried secret of Meadowbrook Lane, the true crime podcasters requesting interviews. The media is going to be relentless, especially with the wedding coming up. My advice is to control the narrative. Consider doing one major interview, 60 Minutes, Dateline, someone reputable. Tell your story truthfully, express genuine remorse for what your parents did, emphasize your commitment to making amends. People respect accountability and courage. I agreed, though the thought terrified me. But Jennifer was right. Silence would let others define my story. I needed to speak my truth. What I didn't anticipate was that Thomas Novak would also give an interview, and his words would change everything about how people viewed this tragedy. "She's the daughter I never had," Thomas would tell the reporter, tears streaming down his face. "Margaret is doing what my own blood relatives wouldn't do, facing an uncomfortable truth with grace and honor. If Anna were alive, I think they would have been friends. His forgiveness would save me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I'd never been on television before. The makeup felt heavy, the lights blindingly hot, my heart hammering so hard I was sure the microphone would pick it up. But I'd promised myself, promised Anna, that I would tell the truth no matter how painful, no matter how it made my family look. Margaret, you discovered that your parents were involved in covering up the death of 19-year-old Anna Novak in 1982. How did you first learn about this?" I took a breath, then told her everything. The letter from my mother, the key, finding the sealed well, Thomas Novak's visit, the excavation, Anna's recovery. I didn't minimize my parents' actions or make excuses. I simply presented the facts as I understood them. "Your parents are no longer alive to face justice. Some people say you're tarnishing their memory unnecessarily. How do you respond to that?" This was the question I'd been dreading. My parents were good people who made a terrible, cowardly choice in a moment of panic, I said carefully. They spent the rest of their lives carrying that guilt, especially my mother. She could have taken the secret to her grave, but instead she left me that letter because she wanted the truth known. She wanted Anna's family to have closure. Honoring that final wish is how I honor my mother's memory, not by protecting her reputation, but by finishing the work she was too afraid to do while alive. You're planning to host your daughter's wedding at the property where Anna died, just weeks from now. Some have criticized this as insensitive. What's your response? We're not ignoring what happened. We're incorporating Anna's memory into the ceremony. Thomas Novak will attend as an honored guest. We're creating a memorial garden where the well once was, with Anna's name and dates. We're transforming a place of tragedy into a place of remembrance and hope. That's not disrespectful. It's redemptive. Your brother, Raymond Novak, has filed legal action to force the sale of the property. He claims you're destroying the family's reputation and the home's value. What do you say to him? I'd been instructed by Jennifer not to discuss active litigation, but I could speak generally. My brother is entitled to his feelings and his legal rights, but I believe some things are more important than money or reputation. Justice matters. Truth matters. Making amends matters. I hope he'll eventually understand that. If you could speak to Anna Novak now, what would you say to her? This broke me. I'd held myself together through the entire interview, but this question shattered my composure. I'd tell her I'm sorry, I said through tears. I'm sorry my parents' fear was stronger than their compassion. I'm sorry she suffered and died alone in the dark. I'm sorry it took 43 years for someone to bring her home. And I'd tell her that she'll never be forgotten again, that her name will be spoken at my daughter's wedding, that children will learn her story, that she matters. She always mattered. The segment aired 3 days later, watched by 8.2 million people. The response was overwhelming, thousands of messages, most supportive, some condemning, all intense. But the most important response came from Thomas Novak, who called me the morning after it aired. Margaret, you've given my sister her voice back. You've made her real again to the world. I can never repay you for that. And I want you to know I've dropped my request for compensation. I don't want money from your family. I want only one thing, to bury Anna beside her mother with dignity, with her story told truthfully. You've given me that. Thank you. I cried for an hour after that call, but they were good tears, healing tears. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were doing the right thing. Anna Novak's funeral was held on May 23, 2025, 43 years and 10 months after her death. The medical examiner had confirmed her identity through dental records and DNA testing. Her remains were released to Thomas for burial. I'd offered to pay for everything, the casket, the ceremony, the headstone, but Thomas refused most of it, accepting only help with the headstone. It was one of the saddest and most beautiful services I'd ever attended. Thomas spoke about his sister, her dreams of becoming a teacher, her love of poetry, her quick laugh, her stubborn streak that had sent her to our property that fateful day. Anna believed in standing up for what was right, he said, his voice carrying across the graveyard. She died fighting for that principle, and in a way she's still teaching us that lesson today. I'd agonized over whether I should speak, whether it was appropriate given my parents' role in her death, but Lily had encouraged me. Anna deserves to hear from our family too, Mom. She deserves to know we acknowledge what happened. So I spoke, my voice shaking but clear. Anna, I never knew you, but I'm learning about you now, and I'm humbled by your courage. I wish my parents had been brave enough to save you, to face the consequences of my father's mistake. I can't undo their failure, but I can promise you'll never be forgotten again. Your name is being engraved on a memorial at our home. Your story is being told, and in 3 weeks, at my daughter's wedding, we'll raise a glass in your honor. You're part of our family now, whether we deserve that connection or not. Thomas embraced me, both of us weeping. After the burial, Thomas's extended family invited us to a reception at a Polish community center. I met Anna's cousins, her childhood friends, people who'd loved her and mourned her for 40 decades. They could have hated me, blamed me for my parents' sins. Instead, they thanked me. They held my hands and told me I was brave. One elderly woman, Anna's favorite aunt, whispered, "Your mother called me 2 years ago when her mind was still clear. She asked forgiveness. I gave it to her. Now I give it to you, too. Enough suffering, enough blame. Time for peace." I stayed after everyone else left, standing in the rain, reading Anna's headstone. Anna Maria Novak, 1963 to 1982. Beloved sister, daughter, friend, your light was taken too soon, but your memory illuminates the path toward justice and truth. Rest now in peace and love. I made her a promise there, at her grave. Whatever happened with Raymond, whatever happened with the property, whatever happened with my own life, I would make sure Anna's story continued to be told. She would never be buried again, literally or figuratively. But as I walked back to my car, my phone rang. It was Jennifer, my attorney, and her tone told me immediately something was wrong. "Margaret, Raymond's escalated. He's filed an emergency motion claiming you're mentally unstable, arguing that your obsession with this case proves you're unfit to manage the property. He's requesting a psychiatric evaluation and immediate partition sale. The hearing is in 72 hours. I stood there in the rain, feeling the world tilt beneath me. My brother wasn't just fighting for money anymore. He was attacking my sanity, trying to paint me as unhinged so he could seize control of the property and stop the memorial, stop the wedding, stop everything I'd been working toward. This was war now, real war, and I had 3 days to prepare for the fight of my life. I'd barely slept in 3 days preparing for this hearing. Jennifer had filed counter motions, arguing that Raymond's request was frivolous and motivated by greed, not concern. She'd gathered character witnesses, financial records showing my responsible management of the property, letters from neighbors and community members supporting me. But as I sat in that courtroom, watching Raymond refuse to meet my eyes, I felt the weight of our shared childhood, our shared parents, all crumbling into this bitter legal battle. Raymond's attorney stood to argue. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about his sister's mental stability. She's transformed a valuable family property into a circus of morbid curiosity. She's invited the family of the deceased to a wedding, turning what should be a private ceremony into a macabre spectacle. She spent thousands on legal fees and memorials for a stranger while ignoring her obligation to her co-owner. These actions suggest someone not thinking clearly, someone whose judgment is impaired by guilt or obsession." Jennifer arose, calm but fierce. "Your Honor, my client is not obsessed. She's ethical. She discovered that her parents were involved in a tragic death and cover-up. Instead of hiding that truth or profiting from it, she's taken responsibility for making amends. That's not mental instability. That's moral courage. And regarding the property value, independent appraisals show minimal impact from the publicity. If anything, the historical significance may increase interest. The judge reviewed documents silently, then looked up. I've reviewed the filings. Mr. Peterson, your motion for psychiatric evaluation is denied. I see no evidence of mental instability, only a disagreement between siblings about property management. However, Mr. Chen's petition for partition sale remains valid. Mrs. Chen, do you have a proposal to resolve this dispute? I stood, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Yes, Your Honor, I'm prepared to purchase my brother's 50% interest in the property for $350,000 based on fair market appraisal. I've secured financing. The sale can close within 60 days after my daughter's wedding is completed. Raymond's attorney conferred with him, then responded, my client rejects that offer. He believes the property is worth at least $750,000, possibly more. He demands $400,000 for his half, or he'll proceed with forcing a full partition sale. The courtroom was silent. That's $50,000 more than the appraisal. Raymond wasn't negotiating fairly. I felt sick. $400,000 was impossible. Even with the refinancing, with draining my retirement, I could barely reach $350,000. Raymond knew that. He was deliberately pricing me out, ensuring the property would have to be sold so he'd get his full share. I'd lose my home, Lily would lose her wedding venue, and Anna's memorial would be destroyed by whatever developer bought the land. Mrs. Chen, can you meet your brother's demand? I wanted to lie, to say yes, to figure it out somehow, but Jennifer had coached me to be honest with the court. No, Your Honor, I cannot. $350,000 is my maximum capability. The judge made notes, then delivered her ruling. Then here's my decision. Mrs. Chen, you have until July 1st, 6 weeks from today, to secure the $400,000 your brother is requesting. If you cannot, Mr. Chen may proceed with partition sale. However, given the wedding scheduled in mid-June, I'm ordering that no property actions or interference with the wedding are permitted until after July 1st. This gives both parties time to reconsider their positions. She gavelled. The hearing was over. Raymond stood immediately, leaving without a word. Jennifer put her hand on my shoulder as I sat there, stunned. We bought you time, she said quietly. 6 weeks. Maybe Raymond will cool down, reconsider, or maybe we can find another financing option. But I knew better. Raymond had made his position clear. He wanted his money, and he didn't care what it cost me. As I left the courthouse, I called Lily. Honey, the wedding is still happening, I promise you that. But after it's over, we might have to say goodbye to the house. Lily's response shocked me. Then we'll make it the most beautiful goodbye ever, Mom. And you know what? Let's crowdfund. Let's tell Anna's story and see if people will help save the memorial and the house. People support justice. People support truth. Let's give them the chance. My daughter, 26 years old, had just taught me something I'd forgotten. Sometimes the fight isn't meant to be fought alone. At first I resisted. The idea of asking strangers for money felt humiliating, like admitting I'd failed. But Lily was insistent. Mom, you went on national television and told Anna's story with dignity and truth. People connected with that. Let them be part of the solution. So we created a GoFundMe, help save Anna's memorial and keep a family home. We told the story simply. A property dispute threatened both my home and the memorial I created for Anna. We needed to raise $50,000 to bridge the gap between what I could afford and what my brother demanded. We emphasized that any additional funds beyond the target would go to a foundation supporting families dealing with wrongful death cases. I expected maybe a few $100s from friends and family, enough to show we'd tried, but what happened instead was beyond anything I could have imagined. The story went viral. The interview had touched something in people. The themes of family betrayal, moral courage, honoring the dead, a daughter fighting for her home resonated deeply. $20 from someone in Ohio, $50 from California, $100 from Texas. Each donation came with a message. Your courage inspires me. Anna's memory matters. Stand strong against family greed. My sister died young, too. Thank you for fighting for the forgotten. The messages broke me open, healed me, showed me I wasn't alone in this fight. By morning, we'd raised $15,000. By evening, $35,000. 3 days later, we hit $50,000, and donations kept pouring in. People sent $5, $500. One person sent $5,000 with a note, "I'm a retired nurse who cared for dementia patients. I was there, Raymond whispered. July 15th, 1982. I was 17, home from my summer job. I heard Dad and that girl arguing by the shed. I heard her fall, heard her screaming. I ran outside and Dad grabbed me, told me we couldn't tell anyone, that calling for help would mean losing everything, losing the house, getting deported maybe, ruining our lives. He made me promise to stay silent. You heard her dying and did nothing? I was 17, Raymond's voice broke. I was terrified of Dad, terrified of the consequences. I told myself maybe she'd climbed out, maybe she was fine. I told myself so many lies, Maggie. And when her body was found, when I saw it all over the news, I thought I'd go insane with guilt. That's why I left. That's why I moved to California the moment I turned 18. I couldn't stay in this house, in this town, knowing what was underneath that garden. Raymond's tears flowed freely. I became a lawyer because I thought if I spent my life defending justice, it would somehow balance out my cowardice. But it didn't. Nothing did. And when you decided to open that well, to expose everything, I panicked because I knew if the whole truth came out, if police investigated deeply enough, they might find out I was there. I might face charges as an accomplice. So all this, the property dispute, the partition sale, the cease and desist, it was never about money or reputation. It was about covering up your own involvement. Raymond nodded miserably. I convinced myself I was protecting the family, but really I was protecting myself. And in the process, I became just like Dad, choosing fear and self-preservation over doing what's right. Maggie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What do you do when the person who's caused you immense pain reveals they've been carrying their own unbearable burden? When you realize their cruelty was armor against their guilt? I wanted to hate Raymond. God knows he'd earned it. But I also understood him in that moment more than I ever had before, because I'd been carrying similar guilt, different circumstances, same weight. Raymond, you need to tell Detective Reyes everything you just told me. The statute of limitations may have passed, but Thomas and Anna deserve to know the full truth, and you deserve to stop running from what you witnessed as a scared teenager. What Dad did wasn't your fault. What you're doing now, that's your choice. Raymond looked up, hope and fear mixed in his expression. If I confess, I could lose my law license, my career, everything I've built. Maybe, I acknowledged, or maybe you'll finally be free. You've been in prison for 43 years, Raymond, a prison of your own guilt and fear. This is your chance to walk out of it." Raymond stood slowly, steadied himself. "I'll talk to the detective tomorrow. And Maggie, I'm dropping all legal action against you. The property is yours. Keep it, honor Anna's memory, live your life without me making it harder. It's the least I can do." They embraced awkwardly, decades of distance between them. "Will you come to the wedding?" I asked, surprising myself. Raymond hesitated. "Do you want me there?" "I want my brother there," I said carefully. "The brother I remember before all this, the one who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me to school, who protected me from bullies. That Raymond is invited. The Raymond who's been fighting me, he can stay home." Raymond left, promising to think about it. The next morning, he met with Detective Reyes and gave a full statement about what he'd witnessed 43 years ago. The detective confirmed that no charges would be filed due to statute of limitations and Raymond's age at the time. But the statement provided closure, filling in gaps in the timeline, corroborating Thomas's account, vindicating Anna's memory completely. Sometimes confession doesn't bring legal consequences. It brings something more valuable, the possibility of redemption. The morning of Lily's wedding dawned clear and perfect. 82 degrees, gentle breeze, not a cloud in the infinite blue sky. After months of legal battles, family revelations, and emotional devastation, we'd reached this moment. The day my daughter would marry the love of her life in our garden, the same garden that had hidden so much pain and was now blooming with hope. Lily was radiant in her grandmother's vintage lace. We'd had it altered to fit her perfectly. She looked so much like my mother in that moment, it took my breath away. "Grandma would be proud of you, sweetheart, of both of us." "I hope Anna would be proud too," Lily said softly, adjusting her veil. "I hope she knows we haven't forgotten her." We'd created a beautiful memorial display for Anna, photographs of her at 19, smiling and full of life, copies of her poetry, information about her family, and a guest book where people could write messages. Above it all, a banner read, "In memory of Anna Maria Novak, 1963-1982, present in spirit, honored in truth." Thomas Novak arrived early, wearing a gray suit, walking with his cane but standing tall. He'd been given a place of honor among the family seating. When he arrived, tears streaming down his face, he embraced me tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting Anna be part of this celebration. She loved weddings, loved romance. This would have made her so happy." Many of the guests knew Anna's story from the media coverage. As they arrived, most stopped at her memorial table, reading about her, signing the guest book, paying respects. One woman I didn't recognize spent 10 minutes there, crying, then approached me. "I'm a teacher," she said. "Anna wanted to be a teacher too. I'm going to tell my students her story about courage, truth, and remembering those the world forgets. Thank you for giving her a voice." As I walked my daughter down the aisle, I felt the weight of all the women in our family, my mother, her mother, back through generations. And I felt Anna, too, the girl who never got to marry, never got to walk this path. I was walking for us all, carrying our shared history of strength and sorrow and survival. The ceremony was beautiful, vows exchanged, tears and laughter, Marcus and Lily's pure joy. During the ceremony, Lily had added a special element without telling me. After exchanging rings, she spoke. "Before we're pronounced married, Marcus and I want to honor someone who should be here. Anna Maria Novak died on this property 43 years ago under tragic circumstances. My grandmother's final act was to bring Anna's story to light, and my mother's courage has ensured Anna will never be forgotten. We dedicate this marriage to truth, justice, and the belief that love is stronger than fear. The entire gathering stood, facing Anna's memorial table in respectful silence. 200 people standing in honor of a girl most of them had never met, acknowledging that her life mattered, her death mattered, her memory mattered. Thomas sobbed openly, and I held his hand, both of us witnessing something sacred, the transformation of tragedy into legacy. The reception was everything Lily had dreamed of. The food was delicious, the music perfect, the speeches hilarious and touching. My ex-husband David gave a surprisingly gracious toast. Marcus's parents, who'd been skeptical about having the wedding here, told me it was the most meaningful ceremony they'd ever attended. Even Raymond came, sitting quietly in the back, not speaking much but present. But the most memorable moment came during the dancing. Thomas Novak stood slowly, walked to the center of the floor, and extended his hand to me. "May I have this dance?" I took his hand, and we danced. Two people from families torn apart by tragedy, swaying to music in a garden that had been both grave and garden, both ending and beginning. And I felt my mother's presence, and Anna's, and I knew we'd done it. We'd transformed horror into healing. We'd chosen truth over comfort, and we'd proven that redemption is always possible if we're brave enough to face what we've hidden. The week after the wedding felt surreal, returning to normal life after months of intensity. Lily and Marcus were honeymooning in Greece. The house felt empty but peaceful. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also lighter than I'd been in years. The truth was out. Anna was honored. My family's secret was a secret no more. Thomas's letter was short but profound. "Dear Mark, I'd barely slept in 3 days preparing for this hearing. Jennifer had filed counter motions arguing that Raymond's request was frivolous and motivated by greed, not concern. She'd gathered character witnesses, financial records showing my responsible management of the property, letters from neighbors and community members supporting me. But as I sat in that courtroom watching Raymond refuse to meet my eyes, I felt the weight of our shared childhood, our shared parents, all crumbling into this bitter legal battle. Raymond's attorney stood to argue. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about his sister's mental stability. She's transformed a valuable family property into a circus of morbid curiosity. She's invited the family of the deceased to a wedding, turning what should be a private ceremony into a macabre spectacle. She spent thousands on legal fees and memorials for a stranger while ignoring her obligation to her co-owner. These actions suggest someone not thinking clearly, someone whose judgment is impaired by guilt or obsession." Jennifer rose, calm but fierce. "Your Honor, my client is not obsessed, she's ethical. She discovered that her parents were involved in a tragic death and cover-up. Instead of hiding that truth or profiting from it, she's taken responsibility for making amends. That's not mental instability, that's moral courage. And regarding the property value, independent appraisals show minimal impact from the publicity. If anything, the historical significance may increase interest." The judge reviewed documents silently, then looked up. "I've reviewed the filings. Mr. Peterson, your motion for psychiatric evaluation is denied. I see no evidence of mental instability, only a disagreement between siblings about property management. However, Mr. Chen's petition for partition sale remains valid. Mrs. Chen, do you have a proposal to resolve this dispute? I stood, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Yes, Your Honor, I'm prepared to purchase my brother's 50% interest in the property for $350,000 based on fair market appraisal. I've secured financing. The sale can close within 60 days after my daughter's wedding is completed. Raymond's attorney conferred with him, then responded, "My client rejects that offer. He believes the property is worth at least $750,000, possibly more. He demands $400,000 for his half, or he'll proceed with forcing a full partition sale." The courtroom was silent. That's $50,000 more than the appraisal. Raymond wasn't negotiating fairly. I felt sick. $400,000 was impossible. Even with the refinancing, with draining my retirement, I could barely reach $350,000. Raymond knew that. He was deliberately pricing me out, ensuring the property would have to be sold so he'd get his full share. I'd lose my home, Lily would lose her wedding venue, and Anna's memorial would be destroyed by whatever developer bought the land. "Mrs. Chen, can you meet your brother's demand?" I wanted to lie, to say yes, to figure it out somehow, but Jennifer had coached me to be honest with the court. "No, Your Honor, I cannot. $350,000 is my maximum capability." The judge made notes, then delivered her ruling. "Then here's my decision. Mrs. Chen, you have until July 1st, 6 weeks from today, to secure the $400,000 your brother is requesting. If you cannot, Mr. Chen may proceed with partition sale. However, given the wedding scheduled for mid-June, I'm ordering that no property actions or interference with the wedding are permitted until after July 1st. This gives both parties time to reconsider their positions." She gavelled. The hearing was over. Raymond stood immediately, leaving without a word. Jennifer put her hand on my shoulder as I sat there, stunned. "We bought you time," she said quietly. 6 weeks. Maybe Raymond will cool down, reconsider, or maybe we can find another financing option." But I knew better. Raymond had made his position clear. He wanted his money, and he didn't care what it cost me. As I left the courthouse, I called Lily. "Honey, the wedding is still happening, I promise you that. But after it's over, we might have to say goodbye to the house." Lily's response shocked me. "Then we'll make it the most beautiful goodbye ever, Mom. And you know what? Let's crowdfund. Let's tell Anna's story and see if people will help save the memorial and the house. People support justice. People support truth. Let's give them the chance." My daughter, 26 years old, had just taught me something I'd forgotten. Sometimes the fight isn't meant to be fought alone. At first, I resisted. The idea of asking strangers for money felt humiliating, like admitting I'd failed. But Lily was insistent. "Mom, you went on national television and told Anna's story with dignity and truth. People connected with that. Let them be part of the solution." So we created a GoFundMe. Help save Anna's memorial and keep a family home. We told the story simply. A property dispute threatened both my home and the memorial I'd created for Anna Novak. We needed to raise $50,000 to bridge the gap between what I could afford and what my brother demanded. We emphasized that any additional funds beyond the target would go to a foundation supporting families dealing with wrongful death cases. I expected maybe a few $100s from friends and family, enough to show we'd tried. What happened instead was beyond anything I could have imagined. The story went viral. The interview had touched something in people. The themes of family betrayal, moral courage, honoring the dead, a daughter fighting for her home, resonated deeply. $20 from someone in Ohio, $50 from California, $100 from Texas. Each donation came with a message: "Your courage inspires me. Anna's memory matters. Stand strong against family greed. My sister died young too. Thank you for fighting for the forgotten." The messages broke me open, healed me, showed me I wasn't alone in this fight. By morning, we'd raised $15,000. By evening, $35,000. 3 days later, we hit $50,000, and donations kept pouring in. People sent $5, $500. One person sent $5,000 with a note: "I'm a retired nurse who cared for dementia patients. Your mother's final gift to you, that letter, shows she never forgot her humanity. Honor her by completing what she started." But not everyone was supportive. Raymond learned about the crowdfunding and was furious. He called me, shouting, "You've turned our family tragedy into a carnival. You're begging strangers for money to save a house you can't afford. Have you no dignity?" I stayed calm, though my hands shook. "Raymond, these people aren't giving money to save a house. They're giving it to support justice for Anna, to preserve a memorial, to stand against the idea that money matters more than morality. I'm sorry you can't see the difference." "This isn't over, Margaret. Even if you somehow scrape together the money, I'll fight you on the memorial, on the wedding, on everything. Dad would be ashamed of what you're doing, dragging his name through the mud for your self-righteous crusade." "Dad was ashamed," I said quietly. "That's why he drank himself into a heart attack. That's why Mom developed dementia. Guilt literally ate her brain. I'm ending the shame, Raymond. I'm choosing truth over comfort. You should try it." The call ended. $78,000 raised. We'd exceeded the goal by $28,000. I could now pay Raymond his $400,000, keep the house, and have funds left over for the foundation Lily had suggested. The impossible had become possible through the generosity of thousands of strangers who believed in doing the right thing. But Raymond's threat haunted me. "I'll fight you on the memorial, on the wedding, on everything." And 2 weeks before the wedding, he made good on his promise in the cruelest way possible. He filed a cease and desist order claiming the memorial violated zoning regulations for residential monuments, demanding its immediate removal. The message was clear. He'd rather destroy Anna's memory than let me win. The letter was devastating. Raymond had hired a specialist in zoning law who'd found an obscure regulation. Residential properties in our district couldn't have permanent memorial structures exceeding certain dimensions without special permits. Our memorial, a beautiful stone marker with Anna's name, dates, and story engraved on it, surrounded by gardens, apparently violated these restrictions. "He's evil, Mom. Your own brother is trying to erase Anna's memorial out of spite. We can't let him win." But the cease and desist gave us 10 days to remove the memorial or face daily fines of $500 plus legal action. The wedding was 14 days away. Raymond had timed this perfectly to cause maximum stress and disruption. Jennifer called. "Margaret, I just received the same cease and desist. Here's what you need to know. Raymond's argument has technical merit. You should have applied for permits before installing the memorial. However, I can file for retroactive permitting and request a hearing. Given the special circumstances and public interest in this case, I believe we can get approval, but the hearing won't happen before the wedding. So what do I do? Remove it temporarily and rebuild after? Leave it and pay the fines? Jennifer, I can't afford more legal bills, and I can't afford $500 a day in fines. There's another option, Jennifer said carefully. Thomas Novak owns property 3 miles from you, a small commercial building he rents out. Commercial properties have different zoning. He's offered to let you relocate the memorial there temporarily, free of charge, until the residential permits are approved. Moving Anna's memorial felt like betrayal, like letting Raymond win. But pragmatically, it was the smartest solution. We could relocate it, save money on fines, apply for proper permits, and eventually bring it back. Still, it meant Anna wouldn't be on our property during the wedding, wouldn't be present in the space where she'd died and been found. Lily spoke up. What if we do both, move the permanent memorial to avoid the fines and legal issues, but create a temporary memorial for the wedding, something within the zoning rules, like a memory table, a photo display, candles. Make Anna present without violating any regulations. Uncle Raymond can't stop that. Brilliant. We'd comply with the cease and desist, protect ourselves legally, but still honor Anna at the wedding. Raymond's attempt to erase her would fail because we'd adapt, improvise, find another way. I called Thomas immediately, accepting his generous offer. Thomas, I'm so sorry. My brother is trying to... Tom, I know what your brother is trying to do. Don't apologize for him. Anna's memorial will be safe here, and when your permits come through, we'll move it back together. Meanwhile, she'll have a place of honor at your daughter's wedding. That's what matters. Watching them take apart Anna's memorial was heartbreaking. Each stone, each engraved letter, each carefully planted flower represented hours of work and love. But I reminded myself, this was temporary. We were protecting it, not abandoning it. Raymond had won a battle, but not the war. Thomas had cleared a lovely corner of his property's courtyard for the memorial. He'd added lighting, benches, and additional plantings. People should come here, he said as we stood looking at it, not just our families, but anyone who needs to remember that truth matters, that justice matters, that the forgotten deserve to be seen. It became something more than a family memorial. It became a community landmark, a teaching tool, a place of reflection. News outlets covered the relocation, framing it as "Brothers' Cruelty Forces Memorial Move" and "Family Feud Continues Over Buried Secret." Public opinion turned sharply against Raymond. His law firm reportedly asked him to take a leave of absence due to the negative publicity. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. This was my brother, the boy I grew up with, now so consumed by resentment and greed that he'd become someone I didn't recognize. But sometimes, when we push people hard enough, they finally break, not into pieces, but into truth. 2 days before the wedding, Raymond showed up at my door at midnight, drunk and crying. "Maggie," he sobbed, using the childhood nickname he hadn't called me in 30 years. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've been wrong about everything." I hadn't seen my brother cry since our father's funeral in 1982. 43 years of stoicism and superiority cracking apart in front of me. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to punish him for the pain he'd caused. But another part, the part that remembered him as a scared 17-year-old at Dad's graveside, couldn't turn away. "Why are you here, Raymond? To threaten me again? To serve more legal papers?" He shook his head, hands trembling around the coffee mug. "I'm here to tell you the truth I've been hiding for 43 years. Maggie, I knew about Anna." "What do you mean you knew?" "I was there," Raymond whispered. "July 15th, 1982. I was 17, home from my summer job. I heard Dad and that girl arguing by the shed. I heard her fall, heard her screaming. I ran outside and Dad grabbed me, told me we couldn't tell anyone, that calling for help would mean losing everything. Losing the house, getting deported maybe, ruining our lives. He made me promise to stay silent." "You heard her dying and did nothing?" "I was 17, Raymond broke. "I was terrified of Dad, terrified of the consequences. I told myself maybe she'd climbed out, maybe she was fine. I told myself so many lies, Maggie, and when her body was found, when I saw it all over the news, I thought I'd go insane with guilt. That's why I left. That's why I moved to California the moment I turned 18. I couldn't stay in this house, in this town, knowing what was underneath that garden." Raymond's tears flowed freely. "I became a lawyer because I thought if I spent my life defending justice, it would somehow balance out my cowardice. But it didn't. Nothing did. And when you decided to open that well, to expose everything, I panicked because I knew if the whole truth came out, if police investigated deeply enough, they might find out I was there. I might face charges as an accomplice. So all this, the property dispute, the partition sale, the cease and desist, it was never about money or reputation. It was about covering up your own involvement." Raymond nodded miserably. "I convinced myself I was protecting the family, but really I was protecting myself, and in the process I became just like Dad, choosing fear and self-preservation over doing what's right. Maggie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "What do you do when the person who's caused you immense pain reveals they've been carrying their own unbearable burden, when you realize their cruelty was armor against their guilt?" I wanted to hate Raymond. God knows he'd earned it. But I also understood him in that moment more than I ever had before, because I'd been carrying similar guilt, different circumstances, same weight. "Raymond, you need to tell Detective Reyes everything you just told me. The statute of limitations may have passed, but Thomas and Anna deserve to know the full truth, and you deserve to stop running from what you witnessed as a scared teenager. What Dad did wasn't your fault. What you're doing now, that's your choice." Raymond looked up, hope and fear mixed in his expression. "If I confess, I could lose my law license, my career, everything I've built?" "Maybe," I acknowledged, "or maybe you'll finally be free. You've been in prison for 43 years, Raymond, a prison of your own guilt and fear. This is your chance to walk out of it." Raymond stood slowly, steadied himself. "I'll talk to the detective tomorrow. And Maggie, I'm dropping all legal action against you. The property is yours. Keep it. Honor Anna's memory. Live your life without me making it harder. It's the least I can do." They embraced awkwardly, decades of distance between them. "Will you come to the wedding?" I asked, surprising myself. Raymond hesitated. "Do you want me there?" "I want my brother there," I said carefully. "The brother I remember before all this. The one who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me to school, who protected me from bullies. That Raymond is invited. The Raymond who's been fighting me, he can stay home." Raymond left, promising to think about it. The next morning, he met with Detective Reyes and gave a full statement about what he'd witnessed 43 years ago. The detective confirmed that no charges would be filed due to statute of limitations and Raymond's age at the time, but the statement provided closure, filling in gaps in the timeline, corroborating Thomas's account, vindicating Anna's memory completely. Sometimes confession doesn't bring legal consequences. It brings something more valuable, the possibility of redemption. The morning of Lily's wedding dawned clear and perfect. 82 degrees, gentle breeze, not a cloud in the infinite blue sky. After months of legal battles, family revelations, and emotional devastation, we'd reached this moment, the day my daughter would marry the love of her life in our garden, the same garden that had hidden so much pain and was now blooming with hope. Lily was radiant in her grandmother's vintage lace. We'd had it altered to fit her perfectly. She looked so much like my mother in that moment, it took my breath away. "Grandma would be proud of you, sweetheart, of both of us." "I hope Anna would be proud too," Lily said softly, adjusting her veil. "I hope she knows we haven't forgotten her." We'd created a beautiful memorial display for Anna, photographs of her at 19, smiling and full of life, copies of her poetry, information about her family, and a guest book where people could write messages. Above it all, a banner read, "In memory of Anna Maria Novak, 1963 to 1982, present in spirit, honored in truth." Thomas Novak arrived early, wearing a gray suit, walking with his cane but standing tall. He'd been given a place of honor among the family seating. When he arrived, tears streaming down his face, he embraced me tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting Anna be part of this celebration. She loved weddings, loved romance. This would have made her so happy." Many of the guests knew Anna's story from the media coverage. As they arrived, most stopped at her memorial table, reading about her, signing the guest book, paying respects. One woman I didn't recognize spent 10 minutes there, crying, then approached me. "I'm a teacher," she said. "Anna wanted to be a teacher too. I'm going to tell my students her story about courage, truth, and remembering those the world forgets. Thank you for giving her a voice." As I walked my daughter down the aisle, I felt the weight of all the women in our family, my mother, her mother, back through generations, and I felt Anna too, the girl who never got to marry, never got to walk this path. I was walking for all of us, carrying our shared history of strength and sorrow and survival. The ceremony was beautiful, vows exchanged, tears and laughter, Marcus and Lily's pure joy. During the ceremony, Lily had added a special element without telling me. After exchanging rings, she spoke. "Before we're pronounced married, Marcus and I want to honor someone who should be here. Anna Maria Novak died on this property 43 years ago under tragic circumstances. My grandmother's final act was to bring Anna's story to light, and my mother's courage has ensured Anna will never be forgotten. we dedicate this marriage to truth, justice, and the belief that love is stronger than fear." The entire gathering stood facing Anna's memorial cable in respectful silence. 200 people standing in honor of a girl most of them had never met, acknowledging that her life mattered, her death mattered, her memory mattered. Thomas sobbed openly, and I held his hand, both of us witnessing something sacred, the transformation of tragedy into legacy. The reception was everything Lily had dreamed of. The food was delicious, the music perfect, the speeches hilarious and touching. My ex-husband David gave a surprisingly gracious toast. Marcus's parents, who'd been skeptical about having the wedding here, told me it was the most meaningful ceremony they'd ever attended. Even Raymond came, sitting quietly in the back, not speaking much but present. But the most memorable moment came during the dancing. Thomas Novak stood slowly, walked to the center of the floor, and extended his hand to me. "May I have this dance?" I took his hand, and we danced. Two people from families torn apart by tragedy, swaying to music in a garden that had been both grave and garden, both ending and beginning. And I felt my mother's presence and Anna's, and I knew we'd done it. We'd transformed horror into healing. We'd chosen truth over comfort, and we'd proven that redemption is always possible if we're brave enough to face what we've hidden. The week after the wedding felt surreal, returning to normal life after months of intensity. Lily and Marcus were honeymooning in Greece. The house felt empty but peaceful. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also lighter than I'd been in years. The truth was out. Anna was honored. My family's secret was a secret no more. Thomas's letter was short but profound. "Dear Margaret, I wanted to write while the thoughts are clear in my mind. I'm not doing well. The cancer is progressing faster than doctors hoped. I have perhaps weeks, not months. But I'm at peace now in a way I haven't been since 1982. Anna is home. Her story is told. Our family has closure. You gave me that gift. I have no way to repay it except to tell you, you're the daughter I never had. If I'd been blessed with children, I would have wanted them to have your integrity, your courage, your compassion. Thank you for being willing to face uncomfortable truths. Thank you for choosing justice over convenience. And thank you for proving that one person's moral courage can heal decades of wounds. Live well, Margaret. Live without the shame your parents carried. You've earned your peace. With love and gratitude, Thomas." I visited Thomas 3 times in his final weeks. We talked about Anna, about his childhood in Poland, about the life he'd lived carrying her loss. He told me stories I recorded, details about Anna's personality, her dreams, her quirks, things that would otherwise die with him. I promised to preserve these stories, to make sure future generations knew Anna as a person, not just a tragedy. Thomas died on July 9th, 2025, 7 weeks after Lily's wedding. I was with him at the end, along with his niece from Florida. His last words were, "Tell Anna I'm coming. Tell her I never stopped looking for her." His funeral was small but beautiful. He was buried beside Anna, their headstones matching, reunited at last. In the months after Thomas's death, I created a website dedicated to Anna's story and to the broader issue of forgotten victims. I called it The Well Remembers, taking my mother's cryptic final words and transforming them into a mission statement. The site documented Anna's life, the circumstances of her death, my family's involvement, and the journey to justice. But it also became a resource for other families dealing with historical wrongs, cover-ups, and the challenge of pursuing truth when it's painful. The emails I received were astounding. People wrote to share their own family secrets, deaths covered up, crimes hidden, injustices buried. Many asked for advice. How do you confront family members in denial? How do you balance honoring deceased relatives with exposing their wrongdoing? How do you forgive the unforgivable? I answered each email personally, sharing what I'd learned. Truth is painful but liberating. Justice delayed is not justice denied. And family loyalty doesn't mean protecting lies. It means loving people enough to help them face the truth. I never intended to become an advocate or public figure, but the story had its own momentum. I was invited to speak at criminology conferences, victims' rights organizations, family therapy seminars. I wrote articles for law journals about historical cold cases and the ethics of familial responsibility. I testified before a state legislative committee considering a truth and reconciliation approach to old, unsolved deaths. Anna's story became a catalyst for broader conversations about how we handle uncomfortable truths. Raymond and I spoke regularly now, carefully rebuilding trust. He'd started therapy, processing his guilt and trauma from witnessing Anna's death as a teenager. He'd taken a sabbatical from his law firm and was volunteering with a wrongful death advocacy group. He told me during one call, "I spent 40 years running. Now I'm finally standing still, facing what I witnessed, trying to make some kind of amends." Our relationship would never be what it was before. Too much had happened, but it was evolving into something more honest, more real. We'd both learned that family isn't about maintaining comfortable illusions. It's about supporting each other through uncomfortable truths. But the most unexpected development came 9 months after the wedding when I received a package from Poland. Inside was a carefully wrapped bundle of letters, correspondence between my great-grandmother and Anna's great-grandmother from the 1930s. They'd been close friends before immigrating from the same village, and their letters revealed a connection I'd never imagined. Our families had been bonded long before tragedy tore us apart. The package had come from Marta Novak, a distant cousin of Thomas's, still living in their ancestral village of Szczecin, Poland. She'd found the letters while cleaning out her grandmother's house. When she learned of Thomas's death and read about Anna's story online, she realized these letters connected our families and sent them to me. The letters were extraordinary, spanning from 1932 to 1945, chronicling my great-grandmother Helena's friendship with Anna's great-grandmother Katarina. They'd grown up together, shared dreams of education and independence, supported each other through poverty and war. When Helena crossed the ocean, one letter, dated November 1944, broke my heart. Katarina wrote, "Dearest Helena, the Nazis have taken my eldest daughter, Bronislawa. She was helping resistance fighters hide in the forest. They shot her in front of the whole village as a warning. I am shattered. Only your letters keep me tethered to this world. Promise me, Helena, if I don't survive this war, if my family is destroyed, promise me you'll remember us. Promise me our names will be spoken. Promise me we won't disappear as if we never existed." Helena's response, "My beloved Katarina, I am destroyed by your news. Branislawa was light itself. I promise you, I swear on my life, your family will be remembered. Your names will be spoken. You will not disappear. If you fall, I will carry your memory. If I fall, my daughters will carry it. We are bound together beyond death, beyond oceans, beyond anything this cruel world can do to us. We remember. We always remember. But Helena had broken her promise. In the chaos of building a new life in America, of surviving the Depression and raising children, she'd lost touch with Katerina's family. The letters had been tucked away, forgotten. And when my parents covered up Anna's death, Anna, who was Katerina's great-granddaughter, they'd failed to honor that promise made across continents and generations. We remember. We always remember. Except we'd forgotten. We'd literally buried the connection. But it wasn't too late. Yes, Anna was gone. Yes, Thomas was gone. But other relatives remained in Poland. Marta, who'd sent the letters, and surely others. I could reconnect these family lines, honor the promise Helena had made 80 years earlier. I could transform this tragedy into a transcontinental act of remembrance and reconciliation. I decided to visit Poland that summer, to meet Marta and other surviving Novak relatives, to see the village where our great-grandmothers had grown up together. I invited Lily and Raymond to come with me, a family trip, a pilgrimage to our roots, an acknowledgement that our story didn't begin with tragedy in 1982. It began with friendship, with women promising to remember each other, with bonds that transcended geography and generation. Planning the trip gave me purpose during the difficult anniversary season. It was almost a year since discovering Anna's remains, almost a year since my world had been turned upside down. I'd spent that year in courtrooms and police stations and therapy sessions. Now I would spend time honoring the deeper history, the longer arc of our interconnected families. Anna, I said to her headstone before the trip, I'm going to Poland to meet your family there, to learn about your great-grandmother Katerina and my great-grandmother Helena, to reconnect what was broken. I think this is what you'd want, not just justice for your death, but celebration of your life, preservation of your roots. I promise I'll bring back stories. I promise I'll remember. The trip to Poland would change everything again, but this time in ways beautiful and unexpected, because in that small village I would discover not just family history, but a living legacy. Katerina's great-great-granddaughter, a young woman named Anna, yes, named after our Anna, who was fighting to preserve historical memory of resistance fighters and Holocaust victims. Meeting her would teach me that the work of remembrance never ends. It just gets passed to new hands, new generations, new people willing to say, "You mattered. Your story matters. We will not forget." Szczecin was like stepping into a storybook, a village of about 3,000 people nestled in rolling hills with a beautiful medieval church and colorful houses. Marta met us at the train station, embracing us like long-lost family. "Welcome home," she said in accented English. "This is where your roots are. This is where everything began." Marta was the unofficial village historian, curator of a tiny museum dedicated to local families who'd resisted Nazi occupation. She'd spent years collecting artifacts, documents, testimonies from elderly survivors. And there, on a wall of photographs, were images of our great-grandmothers, Helena and Katerina, as young women, arms linked, smiling, alive with possibility. Seeing them young and full of hope before the wars and migrations and tragedies that would tear their families apart, it made everything real in a new way. These weren't just stories. These were actual people with actual dreams, actual love for each other. And that love had survived even when memory failed. Marna showed us other exhibits, including one about Bronislawa, killed by Nazis. Your great-grandmother never knew that Bronislawa's death wasn't in vain, she explained. The resistance fighters she helped hide successfully destroyed a Nazi supply depot and saved dozens of Jewish families. Bronislawa is considered a local hero. We teach school children about her courage. She's remembered. And this, Marta said, gesturing to a young woman entering, is Katerina's great-great-granddaughter. Anna, meet Margaret, Lily, and Raymond, descendants of your great-great-grandmother's dearest friend. Anna stepped forward and I gasped. She looked remarkably like our Anna. Same dark eyes, same determined expression, same slim build. It was as if Anna Novak had somehow returned to us, reincarnated across continents. I was named for my great-great-aunt, young Anna explained in perfect English. She was a doctoral student in history at Jagiellonian University. When I learned what happened to her in America, how she died and was forgotten, I was devastated. But then I learned about you, Margaret, about your fight to honor her memory. You've inspired my own work. Anna's research focused on people who died in accidents or tragedies and been buried without proper recognition, much like her namesake. She documented over 200 cases in Poland alone, creating an online database to preserve their names and stories. Your Anna taught me something crucial. No death should be invisible. No person should be forgotten. Every life leaves ripples, and it's our responsibility to trace those ripples back to their source. We spent hours at Katerina's grave, Marta and Anna sharing stories passed down through generations. Katerina had lived until 1978, dying at 92, long enough to know some of her American relatives had thrived, but apparently never knowing Helena had lost touch. Had she felt abandoned? Had she wondered why the letter stopped? We'd never know, but we could honor her now by reconnecting what had been severed. That evening, Marta hosted a dinner for all the remaining Novak relatives in the area, about 30 people, ranging from elderly aunts to young children. They welcomed us with traditional Polish food, music, and incredible warmth. No one blamed us for what our parents had done. Instead, they thanked us for bringing Anna home, for telling her story, for reconnecting our families. The eldest member of the family, Jadwiga, spoke, with Marta translating. Our family has experienced much loss, war, poverty, separation, death. But we survive because we remember, we tell stories, we keep names alive. What your family did, bringing Anna home, honoring her memory, coming here to reconnect, this is the greatest gift. You've proven that love is stronger than death, that memory is stronger than forgetting. Thank you. That night, lying in a small hotel room in the village where my ancestors began their journey, I realized something profound. Anna's death, as tragic as it was, had reopened a connection that should never have been severed. Two families, torn apart by ocean and circumstance, reunited through the courage to face uncomfortable truth. And young Anna, brilliant, passionate Anna, represented the future, a new generation committed to remembering, to preserving, to ensuring no one disappears without being acknowledged. The cycle was complete. from promise made to promise broken to promise restored. The village priest agreed to hold a special memorial service honoring both Anna Novaks, the one who died in 1982 and Bronislawa, who died in 1944. It felt right to acknowledge them together, two women from the same family line who died too young, whose lives had been cut short by human cruelty or human cowardice. The service was simple but profound. The priest spoke about the sacred duty of memory, about how speaking the names of the dead keeps them present among us. Young Anna read poetry her great-great-aunt had written, verses about nature, love, hope for the future. Hearing those words, I could imagine the Anna I never met, intelligent, creative, full of life's promise. Lily had prepared something without telling me. She stood and read, "Dear Anna, I'm getting married in the place where you died. When I first learned your story, I felt shame and horror, but my mother taught me that the right response to historical wrong isn't shame, it's action. So I promise you, I'll name my first daughter after you. I'll tell her your story. I'll make sure you live on in my family's memory, generation after generation. You'll be part of my children's heritage, part of who they become. Thank you for teaching me that courage matters, that truth matters, that every life matters. With love, Lily." Not a dry eye in the church. Young Anna embraced Lily. After the service, young Anna pulled me aside. "Margaret, I want to propose something. I'm planning a documentary about forgotten victims across Europe and America. Would you let me tell your family story, the complete story, from Helena and Katerina's friendship, through Anna's death, through your fight for justice? I want to show that remembrance isn't just personal, it's political, cultural, essential to who we are as human beings." Yes, absolutely yes. Tell the story, all of it, the good, the bad, the shameful, the redemptive. That's the only way it has power. Over the next year, Anna would film interviews with me, Raymond, Lily, Thomas's relatives, Detective Reyes, even some of my neighbors who'd witnessed the excavation. The documentary, titled The Well Remembers, would premiere at the Krakow Film Festival and later air on PBS. It would win awards and, more importantly, inspire other families to confront their own buried truths. The most meaningful part of the trip came when Marta arranged for me to speak to the village school, about 60 students, ages 12 to 16. I was terrified. What could I possibly say to these Polish children about my family's failure that would be helpful or appropriate? "My name is Margaret Chen," I began, my voice shaking. "My parents immigrated from Poland to America seeking a better life. They worked hard, raised a family, achieved the American dream. But they also did something terrible. They let a young woman die because they were too afraid of consequences to do the right thing. I'm here to tell you that fear is the enemy of courage, and silence is the enemy of justice. Your ancestor, Katerina, once wrote to my great-grandmother, 'Promise me we won't disappear as if we never existed.' That's a promise we must make to everyone, to remember, to speak truth, to refuse to let fear make us accomplices to wrong." The students listened intently, asking thoughtful questions afterwards. Their questions were profound. How do you forgive family members who do bad things? How do you balance loyalty with honesty? What if telling the truth hurts people you love? I answered as honestly as I could. Sometimes love means holding people accountable. Sometimes loyalty means refusing to protect lies. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is help them face the truth, even when it's painful. A girl about 14 raised her hand. My grandmother did something bad during the communist era, the girl said quietly. She informed on neighbors to the secret police. She feels terrible about it now, but she's afraid if people know, they'll hate her. Should I tell people? The room went silent. Thank you for showing me it's possible to love someone and still expect them to do better. That's when I understood the true power of Anna's story. It wasn't just about one girl's death or one family's redemption. It was about giving people permission to confront uncomfortable truths, to demand better from themselves and their loved ones, to believe that change is always possible if we're brave enough to face what we've hidden. On our last day in Poland, Marta took us to the cottage where my great-grandmother Helena had been born, a modest stone structure now abandoned but preserved by the Village Historical Society. Standing in the doorway where Helena had stood over a century ago, I felt the full weight of intergenerational legacy, how decisions ripple forward through time, how promises made echo across decades. Helena had been born into poverty, educated against all odds, dreamed of becoming a teacher, but had to leave school at 14 to work. She'd married young, lost 2 children to illness, and finally emigrated alone at 37 years old, leaving behind everything and everyone she knew. The courage that must have taken to start over completely in a strange land, speaking no English, knowing no one. Mom never told us much about her mother, Raymond said quietly. I think she was ashamed of being poor, of coming from this. But looking at it now, knowing what Helena survived, she was extraordinary. And I think Mom's shame about her origins is what made her so desperate to protect what she'd built in America. So desperate that she'd commit an unforgivable act to keep from losing it. Fear of returning to poverty, I said slowly. That's what drove Dad's decision to cover up the well. That's what drove Mom's silence. They'd climbed so far from this cottage, from this life of hardship, that the thought of losing it all, facing deportation, losing the house, returning to poverty, was more terrifying than letting a girl die. Understanding isn't excusing, but it helps. It contextualizes evil not as monstrous abnormality, but as human weakness under extreme pressure. This is important, young Anna said, photographing the cottage, the land, the context. People think evil is done by monsters, by people fundamentally different from them, but most harm is caused by ordinary people making terrible choices when they're afraid. If we understand that, we can recognize those moments in our own lives when fear tempts us to prioritize self-protection over doing right. We can choose differently. We each left something there, a small tribute to Helena, to Katerina, to all the women in our family lines who'd survived impossible circumstances. I left a copy of my mother's final letter, sealed in plastic, with a note. Helena, your great-granddaughter broke your promise to Katerina, but I've tried to restore it. Our families are reconnected. The memory endures. Forgive us our failures and know we're trying to do better. Your legacy continues. Flying home, I realized the trip had given me something precious, not just connection to distant relatives, not just understanding of my ancestors' struggles, but a template for how to live going forward. The past can't be changed, but it can be acknowledged, learned from, honored. The dead can't be resurrected, but they can be remembered, and families torn by tragedy can be rebuilt, not by pretending the tragedy didn't happen, but by facing it together and choosing to do better. Raymond had been quiet for much of the trip, processing, reflecting. On the flight, he finally spoke. Maggie, I'm thinking of leaving law, maybe becoming a teacher, working with at-risk youth. I've spent 30 years prosecuting justice in courtrooms, but real justice happens earlier, teaching people to make good choices before they're in front of judges. Do you think it's too late for me to start over? Helena started over at 37 in a completely new country. You're 63 and you're not even changing countries. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. 6 months after returning from Poland, Raymond quit his law firm and enrolled in a teaching certification program. He now teaches civics and ethics at an alternative high school for students who've had trouble in traditional settings. His specialty, teaching about the consequences of silence, the courage of accountability, and the possibility of redemption. His students call him Mr. Raymond and tell him he's changed their lives. Sometimes, apparently, it's never too late to become a better version of yourself. 1 year, 12 months since discovering Anna's remains, 12 months since my world exploded and reconfigured into something unrecognizable, yet somehow better. I'd spent that year in perpetual motion, legal battles, memorial services, trips to Poland, documentary filming, speaking engagements. But now, finally, there was stillness, time to process everything that had happened and decide who I wanted to be in this next chapter. The financial cost had been staggering, over $90,000 total between legal fees, travel, the property buyout, and various expenses. My retirement savings were decimated. I'd be working well into my 70s, but I'd never regretted a single dollar spent. Some things are worth any price: integrity, truth, peace of mind. "Mom," Lily's face was glowing when she walked in, her hand on her small baby bump. "I have news. Marcus and I went to the ultrasound yesterday. We're having a girl." My heart swelled with joy and the bittersweet ache that accompanies all beautiful moments. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Have you thought about names?" "We're naming her Anna Helena. Anna for Anna Novak, Helena for your great-grandmother. We want her to carry both legacies, the legacy of truth-telling and the legacy of survival. Is that okay with you?" I couldn't speak for a moment, overcome. "It's more than okay. It's perfect. They'd both be so honored." "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about what we pass down to our children, not just names or stories, but values, choices, ways of being in the world. You've taught me something crucial this year, that when faced with a choice between convenient lies and uncomfortable truths, you choose truth every time, regardless of cost. That's what I want to teach Anna Helena. That's the kind of woman I want her to become." "Then she'll be extraordinary, because you're extraordinary. You stood by me through all of this when you could have distanced yourself, protected your reputation. You incorporated Anna into your wedding, helped reconnect our families, supported every difficult decision. You've already proven you have the courage to teach her well." After Lily left, I spent the evening writing, something I'd started as therapy and discovered I actually enjoyed. I was working on a memoir, tentatively titled The Well Remembers: One Family's Journey from Buried Secrets to Redemption. An literary agent had expressed interest after seeing young Anna's documentary, suggesting there was appetite for this kind of story, not just true crime exploitation, but thoughtful examination of how families deal with historical wrongs. I wrote, "We're all haunted by our ancestors' choices, whether we know it or not. The question isn't whether their ghosts will find us, they will. The question is, when they do, will we have the courage to face them honestly, to say, yes, this happened, yes, it was wrong, yes, I'm part of this family, and I won't hide what we did. But I'll also refuse to let their worst moments define everything we are or everything we can become. I'll take the broken pieces and build something new, not by denying the breaks, but by incorporating them into a different kind of whole. Detective Reyes called. "Margaret, it's Maria Reyes. I wanted to give you an update. The investigation is officially closed. No criminal charges will be filed against anyone. The case has been documented as a historical death, fully resolved. And I wanted to thank you. In 20 years of police work, I've rarely seen someone choose accountability over self-protection the way you did. You've restored my faith that people can still do the right thing." Restored faith. That phrase stayed with me because that's what this journey had been about. Not just justice for Anna, but restoring faith in the possibility of moral courage, in the power of truth, in the resilience of the human spirit to face its worst moments and choose growth over denial. The final surprise came a week later when I received a letter from a law firm in Boston. Truth makes us more human. Justice makes us more human. Remembering those who've been forgotten makes us more human. If something calls to your conscience, if something keeps you awake at night, if something feels fundamentally wrong and you have the power to address it, that's worth fighting for. Even if you lose, even if it costs you everything, you'll be able to live with yourself, and that's worth more than any amount of money or comfort. The boy nodded slowly, clearly thinking deeply. "My dad's in prison for something bad," he said quietly. "I've been lying to people, saying he's just away for work, but maybe I should tell the truth. Maybe it's not shameful to have a dad who messed up. Maybe the shame is in pretending it didn't happen." "That's wisdom," I told him, "real wisdom. Your dad made bad choices, but those are his choices, not yours. You get to choose who you want to be, and choosing honesty, even when it's hard, that's choosing to be someone good." As the dedication ended and people slowly left, I stayed behind with Lily, both of us sitting on the bench Thomas had donated before he died. "Mom," said Lily softly, "are you happy after everything? The legal battles, the money, the family pain. Was it worth it?" I thought about this carefully. Was I happy? Not in the simple, uncomplicated way I'd been happy before discovering the well, but I was at peace in a way I'd never been before, at peace with my family's history, at peace with my choices, at peace with myself. "Yes," I said finally, "it was worth it, because now when I look in the mirror, I see someone who chose courage, and that's the person I want to be." Anna Helena was born on March 3, 2026, exactly 1 year after my mother's death. The symmetry felt meaningful, as if the universe was affirming that endings and beginnings are always intertwined, that death and life dance together in eternal rhythm. She was perfect, 6 pounds, 8 ounces of pure possibility, innocent of all the history she carried in her name. As I held her, I whispered the stories she'd one day need to know. Your great-great-great-grandmother, Helena, traveled across an ocean seeking a better life. Your great-grandmother, Susan, made terrible mistakes but tried to make them right. Your namesake, Anna Novak, died too young but was never forgotten. And your grandmother, that's me, learned that the bravest thing you can do is face uncomfortable truths. You come from a strong line of women, baby girl. Some made good choices, some made terrible ones, but all of them survived. And now you're here, carrying it all forward. Mom, will you help me write down all the stories, everything you learned about Helena, Katerina, Anna, even the hard parts about Grandma Susan? I want Anna Helena to grow up knowing her full heritage, not sanitized or simplified, but real. The mistakes and the redemptions, the cowardice and the courage, all of it. Of course, I promised, we'll create a book for her, a family history that's honest about everything. That's the greatest gift we can give her, the truth about where she comes from, so she can make conscious choices about where she's going. I come here often now, to this garden that was once a grave and now a sanctuary. I sit on Thomas's bench and talk to Anna, to my mother, to Helena and Katerina, to all the women whose choices and sacrifices led to this moment. I tell them about baby Anna Helena, about how she's growing strong and healthy. I tell them about the work I'm doing, speaking, writing, advocating. I tell them that their lives mattered, that their stories endure, that they will never be forgotten. People ask me what I've learned from all this. The answer is simple but profound. Truth is the only foundation strong enough to build a life on. Lies might seem to protect us in the short term, but they're quicksand. Eventually, they pull everything down. Truth might hurt, might cost you money and relationships and comfort, but it sets you free. It lets you sleep at night. It lets you look your children in the eyes. It lets you live with yourself. I've learned that family isn't about protecting each other's worst moments, it's about supporting each other through the work of becoming better. That honor isn't about hiding flaws, it's about facing them with courage and making amends where possible. That legacy isn't about leaving your descendants money or property, it's about leaving them values, stories, and the example of a life lived with integrity. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late. My mother was 78, dying of dementia when she finally found the courage to write that letter. Raymond was 63 when he finally confessed what he'd witnessed. I was 59 when I discovered the well. We were all too old to start over, to face hard truths, to change our lives dramatically. But we did it anyway, and every single one of us became freer, more human, more ourselves. So I'll ask you, whoever's hearing this story, what well have you been afraid to open? What truth have you been avoiding? What conversation have you been putting off because it's uncomfortable, because it might change everything? I promise you, the cost of facing it is less than the cost of running from it forever. The dead can't speak for themselves, but the living can choose to honor them through truth, and that choice, to be honest, to be brave, to demand better from ourselves and our families, that's the choice that changes everything. My daughter's wedding unveiled a family secret. A limping guest knew of a buried well, and everything I thought I knew about my family, my history, myself, all of it was transformed, not destroyed, transformed into something truer, stronger, more real, into a legacy worth passing down. Anna Maria Novak died on July 15, 1982. She was 19 years old. Her name is Anna Maria Novak. Say it with me. Anna Maria Novak. She lived. She mattered. She is remembered. And so will we all be if we choose courage over fear. If this story moved you, I ask you to do 3 things. First, have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Face the truth you've been hiding. Honor someone who's been forgotten. Second, share this story, not for me, but for anyone else carrying the weight of family secrets who needs to know they're not alone, that courage is possible, that redemption is real. Third, consider donating to organizations supporting victims' families, cold case investigations, or historical justice work. And please, tell me in the comments, what would you do in my place? Have you faced similar situations? How do you balance family loyalty with moral responsibility? Your stories matter. Share them. Let's create a community committed to truth, healing, and remembering those who deserve to be remembered. Subscribe for more stories about courage, family, redemption, and the power of facing uncomfortable truths. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being brave enough to consider what wells you might need to open in your own life. Remember, the truth will set you free, but first, it will break your heart. And that's okay, because hearts, like bones, grow back stronger where they've been broken. Until next time, be brave, be honest, be kind, and never forget, every life matters. Every story deserves to be told.